Hello, dear students. Today I will just talk about our environmental ethics part 2, as one of the lecture already has been delivered. So this part 2 is the continuation of our earlier lecture, which is known as environmental ethics part 1. As myself, I am Dr. Vijay Kumar. I just belong to the Syama Prasad Mukherjee College, Department of Philosophy, University of Delhi. So let us start with the environmental ethics. What is environmental ethics? This chapter has been divided in certain subtopics. The first one is we'll discuss about the environment. What is environment? Then we'll talk about the environmental crisis, that how to understand environmental crisis philosophically. Then we will discuss about 3 moral approaches to the natural world, namely anthropocentrism, biocentrism, and ecocentrism. So let us start with the first. The first concept which is very important here is environment. As we are discussing about what is environmental ethics, so it becomes very important to understand what is environment. What do we mean by the environment? So when we try to understand it, we can understand it obviously from etymologically point of view. And etymologically speaking, environment came the French word environ. The environ means simply the which surrounds, the things which surrounds an individual or a things is known as environment. So it is all about the surroundings. Again, the environment of an individual includes all of the other entities with which it is surrounded, or the aggregate of the conditions in which a person or thing lives. Though as the second definition, you can say that the aggregate of conditions. It obviously gives us an idea that environment as a concept is not easy to define. It has many definitions or many perspectives to define. So when we just look at this, that the aggregate of the conditions, and the conditions just only doesn't include the you can say material or the concrete things, but we know we are surrounded by sometime abstract thing as well. So our environment is the composition of material concrete things as well as abstract conditions. So therefore the environment can be defined or can be understood in the term of the aggregate of the conditions. Which conditions? In which a person or things lives. So environment is all about to know the living conditions. So it is the study of living conditions, what we do in environment. Now if we look at the whole this idea of environment, you just think over the one question. When any individual exists, how it exists? Can we really say that an individual exists in isolation? Obviously not. We cannot say that an individual never exists in isolation. Rather, it tends to interact to varying extents with their surrounding entities. You just think upon yourself. You think about yourself. Whenever you exist, you doesn't exist in an isolated form. Rather, you interact with the certain things, like you use air to just live, you breathe oxygen, you just exhale carbon dioxide. And likewise, whenever we are just anywhere, we interact with the other things. We are surrounding by the certain entities, and all those entities, concrete and abstract, formulate our environment. So an individual never exists in isolation. This is the very important statement you should remember, and the importance slowly you will understand. Now, just look at this picture. What you see in this picture? There is an elephant, and obviously it is in the forest. Now, you think over, can you really say that the elephant exists in isolation? I don't think so. The elephant is interacting with the other component of environment as well. Like all of us, any individual is just a component of wider environment. And every individual things or entity interact to its related things. Like, as I told you, just you can find out with this picture, an elephant is obviously interacting with the trees or the sunlight, then the land. Everyone is interrelated. They are interacted to each other. So therefore, within the environment, each and every entity doesn't exist in isolated form. Rather, we are just be as a part of the whole. Now, after understanding this environment, let us turn to the environmental crisis. How to understand that environmental crisis? As we have already discussed in our previous lecture, the part 1, that what are the ecological crises, how to understand that ecological crisis, and how it emerged. Now we'll just focused upon the environmental crisis, its philosophical understanding. So, if we look at that, obviously within the 20th century or the 20th century faced an unprecedented environmental crisis. That is true, we know. Earlier in the 14th, 15th century, we have Renaissance, we have Enlightenment, we have the humanism moment of all this intellectual thought process. Likewise, we have scientific revolution, we have industrial revolution, we have urbanization because of that industrial revolution. So the point is that in 20th century, the effect of change of the society and the change of the nature started to occur. Now, human beings started to face that there is trouble. Environmental is in the danger. There is a great danger just lying ahead to the human beings. So, first point or the first step for this philosophical understanding of environmental crisis was that to accept that we are living in a damaging situation. We are facing an ecological crisis. That was the first step. Now the second step comes already, basically, that from where this ecological crisis come? What is the reason behind that? What is the cause of the ecological crisis? And all the environmental philosophers are just agree with that environmental crisis is a human-made crisis. This crisis was caused by human itself. So it is the human-made crisis actually. The crisis, ecological crisis, which are facing now, that is human-made. So it means we need to understand how it is human-made. And that is one of the important approach to understand this environmental ethics, obviously. Now, if we look at that, environmental philosophers hold that the root cause of environmental crisis is the wrong understanding of human nature relationship. Again, as I have explained it in the first part, that for environmental philosopher, the very important point in process to understand environmental crisis was the relationship between human and nature. Again, we face this situation. The most important point in front of ecological philosopher or moral philosopher was that how to understand that human nature relationship. And in fact, throughout the human history, human beings have developed a wrong understanding of human and nature relationship. So therefore, because of that wrong understanding, we faced ecological crisis. So in a sense, that the root of or you can say roots of ecological crisis goes back to the wrong understanding of human nature relationship. In that sense, ecological crisis is a human made crisis. Now, obviously, if ecological crisis is a man made crisis, it is the product of wrong human activities, then obviously to resolve the crisis, humans need to change their fundamental beliefs and attitudes about the natural world. Cause was the wrong belief, wrong understanding, and based upon that belief and understanding, wrong attitudes of the human beings towards the natural world. So therefore, if we really want to resolve ecological crisis, then we have to just change the cause. It means we have to change the fundamental beliefs and attitudes about the natural world, which human beings has formed in a wrong way. So therefore, as the crisis is human made, solution also will come from the understanding of this human nature relationship in a, or you can say in a much more exhaustive way. Now, when we look at that, just that, how to understand this, the problem of ecological crisis, then there are three approaches. Or in other words, we can say environmental ethics prominently consists three approaches to the environment known as environment anthropocentrism, biocentrism, and ecocentrism. These are the three approaches to look at the human nature relationship. Again, remember it that these views or these three views are basically three approach to understand human nature relationship. What sort of relationship are there? Is there an equal relationship, or is there a superior or inferior relationship? Or again, there is a division between the living and non-living factor of the component or the components of the environment as well. So based upon that approach, there are three prominent approach in environmental ethics, that is anthropocentrism, biocentrism, and ecocentrism. Now, first we will focus about anthropocentrism. What is this anthropocentrism? As the again word itself you can understand, anthropocentrism. Anthro, the word anthro means basically human. So this is the human-centric approach, and this anthropocentric, human-centric understanding of natural world is the root cause of our ecological crisis. Most of the environmental philosophers, intellectuals are upon the belief that the root cause of our ecological crisis is this anthropocentric understanding about the natural world. Again, this essentially speaking, if we say that we can define anthropocentrism, or we can say that anthropocentrism is an human-centric approach to the natural world. Anthropocentrism consider human being as the center of all epistemological, metaphysical, as well as moral discourses. So, human beings become the center point of all sort of discussion according to this approach about the nature. Now, anthropocentrism creates a value-based hierarchical metaphysical dualism. That is that. What is that? If you again recall, we just discussed in the last, the previous part, that there are two sort of values: intrinsic value and extrinsic value. This anthropocentrism believe in intrinsic value. It only consider intrinsic value to the humans. They believe humans only have the intrinsic value. Rest of the things or the non-human content of the nature only hold extrinsic value. So it means all the nature, all the non-human things are extrinsically valuable. They are just to serve human purposes, and only human beings has the intrinsic value. Based upon this division of value, the anthropocentrism create an hierarchy of value, and based upon that, they claim humans are superior than rest of the nature. Now just look at this picture. This picture tell you the story very clearly. There are many forms, many things in the environment, like there are human beings and there are other animals, but what anthropocentrism says that human being is at the top. In the hierarchical order, human beings is at the top, and rest of the you can say non-human things are just inferior to the human beings. Interestingly, though I will not go into the detail this point, but we are just focused upon that. In the second line, there is one fish and there is a woman itself. It means anthropocentrism even accept women inferior to human. So anthropocentrism is basically human-centric, or to be much more specific in this term, it is a man-centric approach, that everything revolves around the man. So anthropocentrism is basically can be understood in that way also. It is a man-centric approach. Now, when we come to this, the roots of this anthropocentrism, from where this anthropocentrism comes, how it is established, the roots of anthropocentrism can be traced in the religious cosmology of Christianity. Genesis, the Psalm 1.26 says, "Then God said, let us make man in our image, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the air, and over the cattle, and over all the earth, and over every creeping things that creeps upon the earth." As this automatically here, Genesis is saying that human is superior to the rest of the nature, and human beings have dominion over the rest of the nature. Now, Leon White was the first person who just make this point that the root cause of ecological crisis of this anthropocentrism is the Christianity. Although it was obviously not celebrated many other moral philosopher, and they one of the important one is basically Hughes Donald. He wrote a book in 1975. In that book, he declared that instead of the Christianity, anthropocentric view is an outcome of influence of Greek, like Plato and Aristotelian philosophy. So when this Christianity just take the flavor of Plato and Aristotle, then it become human-centric in nature. And obviously we can look at this Plato talk about the rational structure of the world, and it means that he assigns reason to the human only. When we come to the Aristotle, then Aristotle believe in teleological understanding of the natural world, and he says that the purpose of the world was the service of the man. So therefore, this Donald claimed that the Christianity is not on the blame, but it is basically Plato and Aristotle who just created or established an anthropocentric view. Now, when we come to the modern Western philosophy, modern Western philosophy basically played a very essential and deciding role in the shaping up of our anthropocentric relationship with nature. Again, humanism, one of the movement, revived the tradition of sophists that man is the measure of all things, and set up the building block of anthropocentric view about nature, that human is everything, everything is defined from the perspective of the human. So therefore, sophists talk about a human-centric approach of the nature. Again, humanism refer to any system of thought that makes man and Man the agent and tester of knowledge and value. If you look at this definition itself, it talk about the human-centric approach to the nature. Again, if we come to the modern philosophy, exactly, Bacon, Descartes, Newton, all of those modern thinkers talk about anthropocentrism. Their philosophical ideas are completely anthropocentric in nature. Bacon claimed man is the minister and interpreter of the nature. It means man has the power to understand, to analyze, to control nature. So therefore, it is the duty of the man to understand nature. Likewise, Descartes' mind and body, he creates that they are the two substance, mind and body, and obviously mind is superior to body, and obviously who hold the mind? Only human beings have the mind. So therefore, again, Descartes is also talking about the anthropocentrism. Now, the Newton, similarly, he explained the nature in science with certain mechanical law. He gave a mechanical explanation of the nature. So therefore, Newton physics is also talk about the anthropocentrism. Now, there is an alternative approach to the anthropocentrism. Environmentalists consider that anthropocentrism is the root cause of the ecological problems. So therefore, we need to change this approach, and as an alternate, a much more egalitarian metaphysics or the morality was emerged, and you can say that nature-centric alternative view rethink over human nature relationship. This alternative view about nature demand a rethink over human nature relationship, and this alternative approach move from the biocentrism to ecocentrism. What is biocentrism? By the picture itself you can make out. Now, human being is just part of the rest of the nature. But remember, even this picture, it is clear that still human being is the part, is equal to the only life form. It means with the living things like animals. Still, non-living things are out of the scene. So, this biocentric approach basically give the inherent value, also assign the intrinsic value to the non-human animals like, or non-human living forms like animals. So, biocentrism is basically life-centered approach which consider that with the human beings, other non-living, other living things, living species also have the values there. So therefore, with this approach, life is the center. Life is at the center. Therefore, it is known as biocentrism. Now again, there is a further enlargement of this idea, and the second alternative comes ecocentrism. Ecocentrism goes beyond the rest of the two views, anthropocentrism and biocentrism, and develop an ecocentric perception of nature which comprises all living and non-living components of the nature. Again, as you just easily can understand by the picture, that anthropocentrism talk about humans only, biocentrism talk about the life forms only, ecocentrism talk about the non-living things as well, like land, mountain, stone. Ecocentrism therefore just propagate a ethics which just get its methodological input from the ecology itself. We find out that in ecology, in every ecosystem, everything is related to each other. Even if suppose if a land is just contaminated, then there will be no crop. If there is no crop, there will be no insects which is just live on the crops. So therefore, the whole ecosystem will be collapsed. So in that way, it was a new alternative and a new approach to the environment, which is known as ecocentrism. As the word eco means ecology, this eco came from the word ecology. So it is a ecology-based approach. This approach obviously was propagated by Aldo Leopold in his very famous book, Land Ethics. So land ethics is the main source of ecocentrism. Ecocentrism offers an holistic perspective regarding human and nature relationship. Ecocentrism denotes nature-centered system of values. It is not giving the values just to the human or the other life form, but it is considering intrinsic value to all the components of environment. So it is a much more egalitarian perspective about the environment. And as I just mentioned, it takes, or this ecocentrism takes its methodological inputs from ecology or the ecosystem. Aldo Leopold suggests that along with all living things like animals and plants and non-living things, the earth, water and air around us all are interlocked in one humming community of cooperation and competition, one biota. It means that everything, according to ecocentrism, that all entities of natural world are interrelated and interdependent. They are part of an intricate web of life. No one is superior, no one is inferior. All of us are, all of the component of nature, environment are interrelated, interconnected. If they are interrelated, they are interconnected, then the question doesn't arise of hierarchical division. There is no hierarchy within the nature. Everyone is equal, whether it is human, it is the, or you can say non-human components, it is the life form or non-living things, everyone is equal. So ecocentrism concludes basically that within the nature, a hierarchy among the different components of natural world cannot be drawn. So now it also talk about a moral principle. The ecocentrism give a new principle of morality, by which we can just assign the intrinsic value to all the components of environment. What is that? This is very important to just focus on. Aldo Leopold says that a thing is right when it tends to preserve the integrity, stability and beauty of the biotic community. It is wrong when it is tends otherwise. So it means by this definition, we can make out that it is the ecocentrism provide us a notion of right and wrongness. Based upon that right and wrongness, it developed a metaphysics of the human and non-human content as well. That metaphysics which talk about the egalitarianism. It means that all are equal. And how to decide that what action is right action and what action is wrong action? Then if our action somehow preserve the integrity, stability and beauty of the biotic community, then it is a right action. On the other hand, if it just disintegrate the ecosystem or the ecology, is destabilized or it just debeautify the biotic community, then our action is wrong action. So therefore, ecocentrism completely talk about a different paradigm about the human nature relationship. It just give us a much more egalitarian approach to nature. It provide a ethics which is based upon ecosystem, which is based upon ecological understanding, and finally it draw its philosophical, you can say just philosophical ideas, theories, just based upon this ecological ecology of the world or the ecosystem of the world. And we find out in any ecosystem everything is equal, everything is you can say valuable, everything has the intrinsic value. So therefore ecocentrism is much more egalitarian approach, and in that way environmental philosopher just try to understand ecological crisis, its causes from different perspective, and try to give the answer or try to resolve the ecological crisis by the change in the approach about nature. So therefore these are the three approaches which just look at nature according to their respective ideas, and in that way most of the time we are just believe that this ecological crisis only can be resolved by these alternative approach, most importantly ecocentrism. Then only we will have a equal respect to each entities, and that way we only will develop the reverence or the respect to nature, and therefore we will not unnecessarily cause nature, and that is the key to resolve the ecological crisis. Thank you very much.